Hey guys, so this is episode 2 of Growing Up Pagan, and you're watching Invoking the Balance on my channel of the same name, Invoking the Balance. And this episode is going to be on the question of um, being a kid and seeing the sacredness in things. I got talk more about the sacredness you saw and your experiences, like talking to invisible people, etc. Children often have the ability, but society tends to stomp that out or blow it off. I've also had Evan talk about sacred play, or bring that up as well, which kind of ties into this, but I'm going to make a separate video for that because in about 2 weeks I will be at the house on the land where I grew up, and I think I'm just going to show you guys around and show you the places that I played with and how I did that. Sadly, one of the dogwood trees that was very, very near and dear to me is not there anymore, and I definitely cried when it went away. But yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the sacredness. Oh my God, and yawn at the same time. That works. So the sacredness I saw in my experiences. Um, this was relating to like when I would go to powwows and stuff, and I would see the reverence and how everything was held very sacred and everything was treated very well. Um, Animals, if you killed them to use them, you used every bit of them and you prayed and gave thanks to that animal for allowing you to do this and use these things. There was a sense of equality in a way there. Um, and that everything was living and everything had its purpose, and including you. And so the biggest thing I remember as a kid is stuff like animals. I was huge into animals, and I knew that animals could understand you without you even saying anything. They just know. They can feel stuff. They can feel emotion. They can feel that. They can see what you're seeing. And that was a big one for me. I was that kid that would make friends with that stray dog that hated everyone. I was that kid. Like, no, don't go out there, but he's nice. And the dog's just like, okay. I remember stories that my mother told me of our cat. We had a big tomcat, and he just like prowled around because we lived out in the country. And this cat hated being touched. Like, would go on the defense, hated it. I could pick that cat up by his back legs and stick, mind you, I'm like 4. I could pick that cat up by his back legs and drag him between me, like between my legs, walking, and he's just like going backwards like this, and he'd just let me. He would just let me, completely chill. He would come up to me all the time. I could pet him. I could go up to him whenever I wanted. But everybody else in the house, he was like, ah. um, and I always had a way with animals when I was younger because I saw them as equal in a sense. I saw them as rightfully there and I treated them with respect. I didn't run up to them and just like wrangle them like they were my bitch, you know what I'm saying? That is horrible. But I wanted to play with them and roughhouse them like they would house with each other, you know what I mean? And I guess you could say I became like the animal to deal with the animal because I think I'm already like the animal. I think we all are. Does that make sense? Or like the trees. They feed, they expel, they give and take. We give and take. Animals give and take. Everybody gives and takes. So I think I saw that oneness, I guess, in a way. I saw that circle of life, if you will, in everything. And I remember when I was younger, I would make sacred things. Like, I would find the perfect leaf. And it wouldn't be the perfect leaf by like beauty standards necessarily, but it just felt like this was the perfect leaf for whatever reason. Like, this is the biggest one, or this one is the most brown, or look at how many points this one has. It looks like a crocodile if you turn it. It didn't matter, but that was my leaf for the day, and it was my magical thing that I used. And there was just this connection to the spirit of everything. This free-flowing kind of play that was very fairy-like, I suppose. Um, and I don't know, I like going outside was always an adventure for me. I remember my, I don't know, I'm getting into the other stuff, but I'll save that for the other video. Um, so something that she did mention though is the talking to invisible people thing. So I'm gonna have to give you a little, like, the beginnings of this is going to have to be via my mother's words instead of mine, because I was too young to fully remember. But my mom and my two brothers and I were living in a trailer, and the boys' room before I was there was all the way at the end. And they would always get yelled at for making noise. And they would be like, it wasn't me, I wasn't even in there. And then mom would realize on, most of the days, like, there wasn't anybody back there. They were outside playing. So who's making the noise? Then I come along, and I'm in the in-bedroom. And I'm just jibber-jabbering away to something all the time. Still getting thumps and stuff, but not as bad. And I'm giggling and laughing like I'm carrying on with someone. And apparently, according to her, I had a friend who was a girl. She was older than me, but she was a girl, and she had a very old style name, like old, like Victorian era or something. And it was a name that was not frequent at all, and she was very struck by it because I had no way of coming up with that on my own as a kid. Kids are usually like, I named her Poopy Doo Doo Face, like something random, or something really, really simple like Sally. But this apparently was a very exotic, old style name. And I can't remember it, and she can't remember it. But I do remember having a friend. And that was the beginning of it. She said that once we moved, she never heard about her again from me. So, then there's always been spirits wherever we are. But the thing is that my dad was like, okay, go talk to your mother. Like, that was his general response to things. Okay, with that you're crazy look. And then he would just be like, I don't, go talk to your mother. Like, like, I don't want to hear about this. Um, and I would tell my mom, and my mom would just be interested, like, oh, is that noise that I heard? Or, oh, well, did you ask him this? And, she was questioning on one side, because she's also a Capricorn. She was questioning on one side, and she also has a lot of Aquarius in her, too. Um, so she had to, like, she wanted to ask questions to differentiate if this was just a kid making things up, or if this was something that was just happening. But at the same time, she did it in a way that wasn't like, you're seeing things, shut up. It was, oh, and what did they say? One of those kind of things, like, okay, we're just going to keep asking questions that are open-ended and see where you go with this. And most of the time, it was stuff that just happened, and she would be like, oh, okay, well, ask them this next time, or if they're bothering you, then, tell them that it's your space, and they need to leave you alone. And, so she was very gentle and guiding with it. She wasn't like, yeah, go talk to all of them. you know, but she didn't shun it. And I remember I was a teenager, and I would practice my speeches to them, like maybe there was this thing that I had to say to this boy that I had a crush on or something, and I was nervous about it. So I would start practicing in my room to them. Because I'd be like, okay, okay, I need to practice on someone, and I know you guys are here. You guys are always here. Because, like, you know, I had spirit guides, I had dwarves in the house, I had all kinds of, like, fairies and actual, like, human spirits and such. And so, whether ancestors or others passing through, or of the land. And so I was just like, okay, this is my audience now. You guys are here, so you might as well listen. What do you think of this speech? So my mom would open my door and I'd just be talking to no one, just talking. My dad would always think I was on the phone because I had my own line because I was a teenager and teenagers talk on the phone a lot. And finally, they were just like, just get her a line, just get her a line, please. And so he would always think that I was on the phone, but I wasn't at all. I mean, sometimes I was, but overall, no, I wasn't on the phone. I was just talking to people. Um, and maybe that's why I like doing videos, because this is basically the same thing, because I can't see you guys. I'm looking at a camera right now, but I don't even realize the camera's there. I'm talking to you as if you were in front of me, because that's what I'm used to doing in my life, because they are. Um, so yeah, uh, society as a whole, I knew that it was something that not everybody did, especially by the time I got to my teens. I knew that it was something that not everybody did, and so I just stopped mentioning it in general unless something came up. And luckily, until I was older, the whole we have a message for so and so didn't start. Um, I mean, like I would get little things in dreams um, that I needed to tell them, but it was indirect. It wasn't like verbatim of the dream. It would be something that was a trigger, and then I would be talking to them, and then I would be like, oh, well, this pertains to that because I dreamt this, you know. And but nowadays it's like people pop in and are like, hey, so and so's having trouble with this. You need to go talk to them. Or I dream hop a lot, and I don't always mean to. Sometimes people call me to their dreams. I'm pretty convinced. I have a sister in unlaw, as I like to call her, because Rob and I aren't married. Um, my sister in unlaw always dreams of, like the other day she was having a really bad dream and I woke her up. Um, I wasn't there, like physically, but I woke her up. Hey, Nikki, wake up. Wake up. Um, I have another friend that will dream about talking to me, come to work, and then explain her dream. And as she's talking to me, I will say the exact same thing I said in the dream to her. And she's like, why do you do that? And I'm like, well, stop repeating yourself. And I'll stop repeating myself. Um, but yeah, so there's different things like that, or I'll get visions of things randomly. Ow, I did not have a vision of that. But yeah, dream work was the biggest thing when I was younger. I didn't. They were just there to me when I was awake. Like they were there, and I could feel them and interact them in that way. But they didn't really bring me messages, if that makes sense. I don't know if that was just my ancestors kind of, you know, like shouldering them out or whatever. But yeah, I think it was one of those things where I had to be old enough until they thought I could handle it. As for the rest of the world, um, I just didn't mention it. I don't mention it that much. But nowadays I'm old enough where I don't really care if they are condoning of it or not. If they're not, then I doubt I really want to be around them that much. Um, you know, if they're not to the extent where they're not going to be able to have a friendship or a relationship with me. Because that's another thing that I think people forget. You don't have to agree to love someone, to have a relationship with someone, to care about each other. You don't have to agree. I disagree with my father on a lot of different political and social stances, but I love him. I care about him. I have a relationship with him. I just don't bring up those topics because in other areas we're great. So that's basically how I applied that growing up. So it was weird because none of the other kids would see that stuff, and I knew that they didn't. But when it was just me in my room, maybe that's why I liked my alone time so much, because I was never really alone. And I could talk to them openly without other people being like, what are you doing? So, yeah, I saw the sacredness and everything, but most of all, I felt a lot as a kid, to the extent that I would get panic attacks as a teenager because I was so sensitive. But that's another topic. I'll write that down because that should be a thing too. So basically my father was weirded out, but he was like, okay, just go talk to your mother because I don't want to hear about it. And my mother was just like, are you sure? Okay, then fine. In terms of my friends, it didn't really make a big difference. Those who knew usually had similar experiences. I mean, my best friend was a Cancer who is a moon child through and through and is super sensitive and intuitive. And so, uh, you know, it it would figure. And we've been in a lot of lives together too. So have my mother and I. But yeah, so that is my answer to that. I hope that I talked about the sacredness to how you were thinking, Maria, the Solitary Witch tracks. But yeah, from ever since a young age, I just remember being like, it's Mr. Tree and Mrs. Rock. Like, I think kids kind of naturally do that anyway. I mean, look at the cartoons and stuff that they grow up with. I saw Pocahontas, and you know, the Disney movie that everybody gives shit about because it's extremely historically inaccurate, definitely. But as someone who grew up close to Jamestown, let me tell you, very historically inaccurate. But that movie was still my favorite movie. Why? Because they represented animism very well in that movie. And it was one of the first representations in media that I saw that explained how I felt and how I saw the world. You know, the wind speaking and Grandmother Willow and you know, the animals having their personalities and fighting amongst each other but being friends and being all a part of this big circle in accordance with each other and fitting in like puzzle pieces. That was one of the first movies that I was like, yes, finally, exactly, someone gets it. So yeah, that was a huge movie to me, even for all its historical inaccuracy. So, yeah. But I'm going to end this now. So, I love your faces, and I hope this answered your question. If there's any more questions onto this, then leave them below, or anything you thought of or would like me to cover, because I have a ton of questions, and I see this going for a while, and I don't mind talking, that's for sure. You guys know me. So, I love your faces. Thank you for watching. I will see you later.